Welcome to All Out in the Open. I'm Charlie Bird.
And I'm Ben Schlatti. Today's episode is an out and about episode where Iese Wilson takes us on a tour of the LGBTQ Latter-day experience around the church. And today's stop is the
I was
Philippines.
trying to do a drum roll.
Oh, sorry. I didn't
It's
know.
okay.
So,
The Philippines.
we're going to the Philippines.
Woohoo!
And he's going to introduce us to his friend Cris Sembrano, who's from Mindanao in the Philippines.
Yeah, this is so interesting. One thing that I thought was cool was like the cultural structure of the specific town that he lives in, where it's like a mix of Islam and Christianity, and how that like overarchingly played into the story. I just thought it was interesting and kind of fun to hear a little bit about.
Yeah, even like the Philippines, we might think of it as one thing, but like this part of the Philippines is different than the rest of the Philippines. Like even there's a lot of diversity. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was fun to hear about how he came out in his ward and like converted to the church with other friends who were also gay, and kind of what that did to like the local religious community. It was cool.
And so Chris then goes to school at BYU Hawaii and then BYU in Utah, and he is guided regularly through like dreams, like spiritual promptings that come through dreams, which I think happens in a U.S. context, but not nearly as much as happens in the church abroad.
When I listened to this, I was like, I hope that my dream last night had nothing to do with what I should do with my life, because it was so weird.
Yeah.
But it was cool. Like it was really cool. Chris, I loved listening to this episode, and I think you all will too.
We hope you love it.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Out and About, where we go on tour through the stories of LGBTQ Latter-day Saints all over the church who are modern pioneers. I'm your host, Iese Wilson, and today we are traveling to Salt Lake City, Utah. And joke lang. Or, well, it's half of a joke. My guest today will be a dear friend from my undergrad over in BYU, Hawaii. And his name is Cris Sembrano, who currently resides in Utah, but is originally from Mindanao in the Philippines. So I'd like to welcome Chris to the podcast, and mabuhay.
Mabuhay. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here, Chris. Like just before this podcast got it rolling, Chris and I were we were starting the podcast late because we were
Just
catching up.
chatting.
Yeah, it was so natural to be catching up with him. Chris, how's life? What's going on?
Everything's great, Winter is coming in Utah, which is I'm not the most excited about, but I'm getting used to it. But life is great, working full time as a career coach. I love working at the university. I think we're like a newly married couple. We just celebrated our 1 year, so we're just like really, yeah, we're like really learning how to live life as a couple, if that makes sense. Like we're like growing and at the same time learning.
I think every single married person on this podcast
Yeah.
is nodding their head whether they're gay or not. I also got to say, since you talked about the snow, I remember at BYU Hawaii, that was like the dream of every Filipino person who came to BYU Hawaii is they had to make it to Utah. They had to go to Idaho somewhere just so they could get
Yes.
the photo with the snow. So tell me
It's
about that. Like, was that your experience, and where are you now with that?
yes, definitely. So, like in the Philippines, it's either sunny or rainy. Like that's like the weather all the time. And then, in the church, you'll see those handbooks and pamphlets like they use for like church materials. There's always a picture of the Salt Lake Temple, like the conference center. So as a LDS, you always say like, oh, I always dreamed to be there in Utah one day and experience snow. And I remember in 2016 when I got in um, at BYU Hawaii, I have an uncle who lived in Utah, and I was like, Uncle, I want to visit. And then I came, I came, and then once I get out from the airport, I was like, wait, this is winter? Like, I feel like it's hurting my skin. Like, I don't like it. Like get me out of here. But it's always mandatory. It's like I need to take at least one picture with the snow. It's
The
just like
sacrifice for the
experience
photo.
it. Yeah, sacrifice. So I did took one picture and it was amazing. And then after that, I was like, I always just stayed inside my uncle's apartment and just like wait until we do something.
And now you live there.
And now I live there, and it's actually like I'm kind of like adjusting now since I got here 2021. Like every winter, like my first 2021 first winter here when I attending BYU, like I have like 4 layers. And then 2022, like 3 layers, 2023, like 2 layers. So now I'm like, 2 layer, like a sweater and like a winter coat, and then that's it. Like I'm improving. Like
You
I'm
are.
like embracing the nature or like the weather here, the season.
Good. Good. I'm glad you're loving
Yeah.
it out there. I'm roasting out here in Arizona, so I'm glad that you have
Oh,
you
it
have
must
that.
be nice.
Yeah, it's just the opposite. Do you want to die melting in the desert, or do you want to freeze to death in the snow? It's
It
both can be
depends.
intense.
It's just your struggle.
Let's go into our opening question that I ask all the guests, and that's because I love food so much, and so I think it's a great way to introduce us into your culture before we start diving into your story. So, Chris, like, what is a food that you think people typically associate with the Philippines?
Yeah, I mean, if I don't know if you experience going in a Filipino potluck, but in a Filipino potluck, I would say like adobo is the most known dish.
Hmm.
Adobo, it's either chicken or pork, but it's just like the most famous, like known. Like in every celebration or just a regular day, adobo is usually like served in a Filipino household. Like banana ketchup for us Filipinos is like our main ketchup, you know?
Yeah, because they
We
didn't have
loved it.
tomatoes, right? And so they had
Yeah,
the
they
one
need
the
to
woman
invent.
scientists turned it into from banana, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. Like I now hopefully all the listeners like I'm googling banana ketchup now for their dinner tomorrow. Now
Yeah.
just like with food, like we there are things that we think we know about the culture. We people may know stuff about the Philippines, but now like they maybe not have known about bicol or like cassava cake.
Yeah.
And so like
Yeah.
that same thing is what we want to do now with your story. Let's dive into particularly your story of what it's been like growing up as a gay member of the church in the Philippines, particularly in Mindanao. Which
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about Mindanao and what it was like growing up as a gay child. And I don't think you remember the church yet, but you're gonna have to tell that story.
Yeah. Sure. Like for those who are listening, like if you look at the Philippines map, Mindanao is like the bottom part of the map. So like there's three main islands like Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. It's a very like different area of the Philippines. It's also like a diverse place. There's a lot of like native Filipinos there, including, my ancestors. My grandma is part of like the native tribe there called the Bagubo tribe. And Mindanao is like we have a lot of like Muslim brothers and sisters there. And then it's also known to be scary to a lot of like foreigners. And I remember the church has foreigners missionaries there before, but because of like situation or things that happen like kidnapping, because of like like there are like areas in there were like just like dangerous for foreigners, so I think they stopped sending foreigner missionaries in there. But other than that, it's a very beautiful place. It's very diverse, like there's Christianity, there's Islam, and other like native people who like live together in one place. So it's like a really nice place. It's very abundant with like natural resources and stuff. So it's nice because it's not very known, but it's like for locals here, it's like just like this majestic place for us.
Yeah, and when you
Um,
talk about having like Christianity and Islam over there, that to me as a gay individual, like, do I want to be in that place? So what's that? What was it like being like finding your identity of being gay in that location?
yeah, it's actually like I would say, you know what, like now that you ask me that, like now I'm thinking like, how did that happen? Because like, I think it's just like known that that place is for Christian and Muslim. So I feel like generations that happen is like, I think people just started to like accept like, oh, we need to coexist because this is our land.
Hmm.
We like treasure it, and this is where we live. I remember I have like Muslim friends, and they know that I am gay, during high school. And I also, when I was like attending college there, I know there are like Muslim gays too. And
Mm.
I talk to them about, like, oh, what is it like for you? Because like this is what it like for me being gay in my religion. But they actually say like there's like, some discrimination too, but also like their faith or religion is very important to them, that they still like practice it. So I think that made us really more connected because we have like the same struggle, but at the same time we're like trying to like live what we know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's
Yeah.
dive a little more into your journey then. Tell us more about what it was
Yeah.
like to be you in that setting.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a very like small town in the Philippines called Santo Tomas. That area is just rice plantation. So I grew up in a rice plantation. My dad is a farmer. That's just like the life there. And then it's during that time, I would say that, you know, people's perspective is very like, we're good here. Like, this is our life. We're fine here. We don't need to go somewhere, And then family life was rough for me growing up. Like, I think, like I have that family where I have like domestic violence like exists, like alcohol abuse, like all of just stuff is just like very like messy family growing up. So I remember that when I'm still like very young, my very first, like I would say people was like, oh, he's gay for sure. I remember because like my dad is like a counselor in the local government there,
Wow.
and I always participate in dance if there's like occasions in like this local like events. And then I remember one night there's two girls and me. We were dancing, and then I was the best dancer. Like I'm outshining these two little girls. And then like I remember like looking at my dad, looking at his like friends. They're like laughing at me in a way like they're very happy, but at the same time like we think your son is gay. Like I hear those whisper, like, I think your son is gay. So,
And how
but
old do you
growing
think
up
you
as
were?
a,
How old do you think you
I
were?
think I was like six.
Wow. Okay.
I was 6 or 7. Like I'm dancing with all my heart, like doing this dance steps, and they were like, okay, like he's very feminine. Like he just outshined those two girls. So, and then like growing up in my elementary school, like I always participate in dance because like it's just like something that I love. But as a gay kid, I didn't really like understand what it means.
Mm.
Um, but my family never talked about it as well until like I went to America. Like we never had a sit down. We're like, hey, are you gay?
Mm.
Like, we never had that conversation with my dad. I never had that conversation even until now. So it's like I think it's just like a very Asian culture where like we don't really express what we're thinking. Like we don't even say like, I mean, in my family, like we rarely say I love you. Like it's just like we're not very expressive. But all I know is growing up, they know that I'm gay. And I grew up with like three older brothers. Like I have a very like a lot of like big masculine, like what do you call that? Like example in my family. But
Hmm.
here's that one gay kid in that family where like, people just talk about. So we growing up, we never really had that kind of like conversation like, are you gay? Like, but I remember my brother will always bully me because like, they're the masculine like sons, and then they have this like younger brothers like very feminine. So at young age I know that like I'm already gay. And I remember my mom, because I think I don't know if it's just a generational thing, but during that time my mom will always tell me like, if you're gonna be gay, like it's gonna be bad for you. Because my mom has a gay brother, so I have like a gay uncle, and like he's very like loud and like out and proud, right now in the Philippines. Like I love watching her videos, like doing catwalks and stuff.
Mm.
But I remember my mom will always tell me like, hey, because this is her idea about being gay. Um, I remember she will always tell me, if you're gay, you're gonna only fall in love to a straight guy.
Mm.
Like that's the idea. Like you're gonna fall in love with a straight guy, and that straight guy will use you and like make you like a sugar daddy or like a sugar mom. Like you're a financial resource
Mm-hmm.
for for that person. So in the Philippines, there's a joke like if you're having a hard time money, like find a gay person. Like
Wow.
they will give you. So that's like the idea. And my mom is scared for me. Like I don't want you to be that. I don't want you to be used. And just like the idea like I'm only gonna fall in love with a straight man. You know, like that's like the only thing that she knows. Like gay people only in loves with like they only look for like gay like straight men. You know, they want that masculine relationship with that straight guy. So I was like, okay, that's very interesting. So when I was like growing up, like that's my mindset. Like I'm not gonna be that gay. Like I'm just gonna be quiet. I'm not gonna like find a relationship with a man because they're just gonna use me. So like that's my idea of being gay growing up. So
I
when I attended high school, I remember there was one time where like there's a gay association in there. Like there's this senior gays that were like going each like room, like high school room, and says like who's gay here because we're building an organization. Then my classmate pointed me out. I was like him, and then I just started crying because I was like I don't want to be part of this. Like I don't want to be like you guys. So it was just like it was scary to me to be part of it, like just to be like the idea of being part of it because like I don't want to be used. Like I don't want to be like fall in love and just be used by someone. So that was just like that one was a traumatic event for me because I was like publicly crying because my classmates thought that I'm gonna be happy, be part of this gay organization in my high school. I was like, I don't want to be part of it.
there's a lot of things that you're saying here that's like I don't think I've ever heard that here in the US of like
Yeah,
of that, oh, the gays are the people that will be like paying basically straight men to
yeah,
just so if like if how do you say this, like you fall in love with a straight guy and then they're just going to use you for money. Like I've never
yeah,
heard that before. But another
yeah,
thing I'm noticing in this conversation is it seems like everybody keeps putting you in the box of gay, but and at times it sounds like you say like, oh yeah, like I am gay, but I don't want to be that. So like, at what point do you accept that label of gay or whatever the Filipino word would be like? What was that journey like to that label?
yeah. And like I remember growing up like so in my dialect they called it bayut. So with kids sells like oh bayut bayut bayut. It's basically like a bullying like idea of like oh he's gay like for sure he's just gonna look for straight man and then like it's just like there's always this negative connotation. I actually to be honest like it was a journey because during that time when I was 14 years old, when I was like introduced to the church because I was a convert. um let's say when it comes to like I became like comfortable with my label when actually when I got here at BYU Provo. Like that was like the time that I was like really really comfortable, embrace it fully.
Let's just
But
pause
maybe
really
because
fast. Let's pause really
yeah,
fast. You just skipped from age 14 to BYU Provo. And so, just so our
yeah,
audience knows, that is age 14 to Chris getting his master's. That is how long that journey was to get comfortable with that label.
yeah, to get comfortable with that label, like I'm proud to say like I'm gay and I'm happy. But before that, like there's always just this struggle of like, ugh, I don't want to be part of this. Like that's just like my idea. I don't want to be part of the LGBTQ community because like I always hear my mom like, you're gonna be used. Like that's just like my idea. And then, you know, like I remember when I was 14 years old, I was introduced to um the church. And then my mom set me up with like, okay, you need to meet with the missionaries. And
And wait, is
I
your mom a member?
remember, yeah, she is a member. She is the
Okay.
first one who got baptized in my family, but the rest of my family is not members of the church. But during that time, like she needs to go somewhere to work so that she can like send money to me while I'm studying high school. And then I was able to like live in my cousin's house because they're like LDS family. And then before she left, she was like made sure that like, oh, you need to like meet with this missionaries. And I was like, okay. And then it's so funny because during that time the missionary is so handsome. I was like,
I knew you were gonna
okay,
say that.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna meet with them until they talked about love chastity.
Mm.
Because that's like part of like the teaching process. Like they need to teach everything. But I remember when they were teaching me, like first week, I had my first prayer and asked the question, like, is this church is true? And I already received an answer. So I was like, oh my gosh, like this is different. Like this is nice. Like I felt good. Like that's the first time like I'm experiencing, like, understanding the spirit. Because growing up, I always hated God because of my family situation. But the church kind of like during that time when they're teaching me like this, there's that peace. And then when they taught me law of chastity, because I think during that time, like the way they teach it, like you can't be gay or lesbian in the church. And in my mind, I was like, oh, good. Like I don't want to be part of it. So maybe this church would kind of like help me become straight, remove this feeling. So it was like it was like a turning point for me. Like, oh wow, like I think this gospel is true and it might really change me. Like I have that feel like remove these feelings
Yeah.
of
The,
that stuff.
the
And then
gospel is
after,
true, and you need it to be true because you need this thing to go away.
yeah, yeah, and it's so funny because like after 1 month, I got baptized, and I was like, okay, cool, like got baptized, and I was so happy because like the church was like a milestone in my life where it just changes everything. Like I became like happier. I know my purpose. Like I understand God. Like I know that there's a a loving heavenly Father. And then I'm like trying to like okay like this is like the process for me to be like really like remove this gayness within me if I just follow everything like the church says. So that was like a really good turning point for me.
And if I remember you telling me earlier, like you were not baptized alone. You had a person that was in a similar situation as you, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. Like this is gonna be changing my life, but it's not really like it's a it's another experience. So during that time I remember within that month there's three of us like got baptized in the church, and I'm pretty sure like we're all gay. Like we are those kids were like, oh my gosh, like in my mind I was like, oh, I know he's gay, and then the other one's like also gay. So I was like, okay, there's three of us gays got baptized in the church. And I remember, so I'm just gonna like share this, like, although like I'm gonna share some experiences that for me, this is my personal experience, but I'm not generalizing everyone
Hmm.
in that area or like in my stake right now back in the Philippines. But these are just moments that I like, experience that I had within the church. So I remember during that time when we were baptized, there's always a talk where like, what's happening? Like this never happened before. Leaders were like, we have three gays in that branch because during that time it was just still a district, and they're very worried about it. So like everyone was just like laser like focus to us that make sure that we're like not doing like gay things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What do you
So
what do
I
you think
remember,
they're talking? What do you think your those things are that they're trying to change from you? What are the gay things that they don't
I think
want?
they just want to make sure that we act like masculine, I guess. Like, like because they never had experience with that before, and then they need to deal with it
Mm.
now. So, and then there's three of us. So they were like very like concerned. So I remember when I was like, because there's the talk now, okay, like there's three gays in that branch, and then I remember my branch president that time like asked me to meet with him. And then in that conversation, he asked me like, okay, can you rate like how straight you are? from 0 to 10, like 10 being straight, zero like being gay. And in my mind, I was like, wait, what? And I was like, eight? Because like I feel like there's I can feel like there's still gay, but I was like, I'm eight straight president. I told him that, okay, and he was like, okay, we need to work on that too to get to 10. And I remember he told me, I was like, during that time, I this is the words that he said, like, did you know that being gay is unpardonable sin?
What?
So I was like, oh, like, oh shoot, like in my mind during that time, like, okay, I need to work harder because I want to be forgiven. So I was like, wow. And then after that experience, I was like trying really hard, but like naturally it just come out. If you're like gay, like when we do like performances in the church, we always outshine these other girls because like the three of us are like we love dancing. Like we do our costumes. We're very creative. We're very talented, and they always appreciate that. But I remember like all the time that there are moments where like I feel like very discriminated, because they always like see this gayness in me, and they want to make sure that I don't bring like shame in the
Mm.
church, like as a youth. Because I remember my there are leaders, right? Like the young men president in the district, like they will go to our Sunday school for young men and teach us about like what is feminine and what is masculine. Like you need to be masculine. You
Wow.
don't need to be feminine. So like, this discussion, I was like, well, like, and in my mind, I'm like starting to like question, like, wow, like they really underestimate me. Like they only see these things that I do like naturally, but they don't really trying to like focus on the things that I can offer in the church. And I remember that time where like, okay, I need to like do better. Like, like serving a mission was like a big thing,
Hmm.
but also like people were like, I remember one leader when I was like applying for my mission, like just like it's so easy for them to do like discriminate us in public. We're like, okay, hey, make sure when you go to your mission, make sure you don't touch your companion, okay? Like those kind of like things where like they
Wow.
think it's funny, but it's at the same time it's like, oh, wow, like this is how you really see me, like you like just like underestimate me, and it's sad because during that time I remember like as far as I know now it improves, but during that time like I don't think you can talk to a leader and come out because they use like fear, shame, and guilt to change you. Like that's always the answer. Like that's unpardonable sin. You're not gonna be happy. Like it's like like that kind of idea. So I remember growing up, like I always just like hold it in me. Like one of my friends left the church. Those one of the three because
Hmm.
they call us like Powerpuff Boys, the young men, because we're like that three gay. But one of my
The,
friend
the
left
the
the church
the
because
Powerpuff Boys and the Young Men.
men, yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Wow.
our name. They call us that because we're the three gays during that time. And yeah, I always feel like I'm always like being looked at like laser focused like the leaders. And then when sometimes when I walk like I don't know, like it's like there's a gay walk, but like I feel like very feminine when I move. And then like leaders will put me on the side like, hey, like don't do that. Like there's always things like I feel like
Wow.
all eyes on me and I can't do right. But like
And you're
but
just walking. You're just
yeah,
walking
and
to
I'm
your
just
next,
walking.
and they will
Yeah, and
pause
I'm
you
just
and say like,
walking.
you can't do that. And you're just
Yeah.
like, I'm just trying to get to my next
Yeah, I
point.
was like, oh, I'm just like walking. But like other than that bad experiences, there's also like people who were like very happy. Like I remember one of our young women president, like she knows that I vibe with the young women. So sometimes like there are like activities like she will like ask us to join because like like I'm just happy being around with them because I feel like safe and welcome. But it's just like it's very like it's just sad that I experienced that, but at the same time, I'm glad that I experienced it. It's kind of like make me like tough enough, like,
Yeah.
hey, like you need to prove something that you're worthy to be like in the church and you can do this thing. So, I served a mission and then came back and I was like very happy because, a lot of people think that I'm gonna touch my companion, but like I happily like returned with honor. And then I remember when I came back, like I had the opportunity to speak and I was like, hey, I'm here, like I'm back. And I remember I really went to that leader and told him this, like, hey, like, President, I'm a returned missionary now. Like, kind of like this, like, yeah, this is who you doubted that you're scared of. And then
But
it's so funny.
before moving
Yeah.
on, I'm curious. We've heard a lot about like the hard parts of what it was like being you, in that branch. But like you still stayed, and then you did a full mission. So like
Hmm.
for me, that tells me there's a backbone of a testimony in there
Oh,
because
yeah.
you didn't turn out to be like your friend who needed to get out because you needed to feel a little bit safer. So tell me more
Yeah.
about that spiritual growth as well from of why you stayed and then what the mission did for you before we move on
Yeah.
to be coming back and then BYU Hawaii.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think one of the things too is like, I have a really, like, a lot of trauma in my family because of that situation. Like, I'm always mad. Like, you know, the church really helps me to see the brighter side of life. Like, hey, there's like a loving Heavenly Father. I learned about forgiveness and, I learned about repentance. It's just like a new beginning for me. And, like, I feel like the Spirit really like give me that testimony, like, this is the true church and I need to be part of it. And then I remember, although I have those bad experiences, I always think church is like a safe space for me, which is funny because like I don't really fully experience it, but every time I go to church, it's just like there's like that's safe space for me, like I'm surrounded with the people with like same ideas and like I have friends and church members who like really treasure me and like took care of me because like I grew up really, really poor and the church really like give me like those experiences like first airplane ride when we go to the Manila temple, like
Mm.
understanding the Bible, the scriptures, and those kind of things were like I never learned like when I was like not in the church and when I was like just in my like home and church become like a home for me. And then it's just like when I was experiencing those bad things, there's always this feeling about like, well, like I feel like this is my place too. So I'm gonna continue and do what I think that is good, and I'm just gonna keep doing it because I feel like growing up from a very tough situation family, I think that's also like made me feel like sure, you can discriminate me whatever you want.
So
You
it's
really
not
think I'm gonna leave the church?
that bad in comparison, I guess it feels like.
Yeah,
It's like you used the word I think abuse earlier, right? And so
yeah,
like and so now you're at church and like now this is just people they're just using words and they're just
yeah,
but it is a safer environment for you and so those things don't have as much weight back then, but probably now
yeah,
looking back at them, you're just like, holy cow, like that was mean or that was hard for me to live
yeah.
through.
Like that was really, really mean. Like it's just sad to think about it. But yeah, that was my experience. Like I feel like I had a really strong testimony of the church and the church really changed my life. So I was like, I don't think I'm gonna leave just because you say these things.
And didn't you become like a leader, like a church leader when you came back?
Yes, I did. So it's so funny because when I came back after my mission, my branch president during that time were like called me to be a young man president. I was like, of all callings, like, are you like setting me up to failure or like to get more like chastisement and like discrimination from the like the church members? But it's so funny because he was like, I want you to become the young man president. I was like, like that feeling where like, oh, I don't know what would be the young men feels if I am their leader. At the same time, those doubts were like, what would the members say? But I remember he told me, I asked him like, why me, president? Like, there's other like men there, but he was like, you're on time on your mission preparation. You serve exactly at 19. You're good at the scriptures. Like he saw these good things about me instead of like my gayness, and he was like, I think you'd be a good example for young men, especially serving a mission. I was like, okay, cool. Like I do that, and then I was very active in my duty to God during that time too, because before
The duty
the
to
for the
God
strength of the youth
pamphlet.
pamphlet, yeah, like
Yeah.
that's the thing before. So it's so funny because when I became the president, I was like, okay, I need to help this young man get the young man medallion or something, like like a reward once you
Yeah.
finish it. I remember they have that thing before, because for a young women medallion, they have that necklace, which is really nice. So for young men, they have that thing too. So I was like, okay, in order to like achieve those things, we need to follow duty to God, like activities. And it's so funny because, like when I called as a young men president, of course, people talk again, and we're like, oh my gosh, like the young men will become the relief society, like the young women, like group. I was like, oh my gosh. I guess like, in it's so funny because I feel like in now, I mean, before, the only thing that I only knew that the young men do is basketball. That's it.
Mm.
Like that's like make you a young man. You play basketball, and I never played basketball because like it's just not my thing. But during that time, I was like, okay, we need to follow duty to God. So part of duty to God is like learn how to cook, so that when you go to mission, you know a dish. You learn how to cook, learn to do like etiquette, like dinner, like those stuff. And then members saw it as like, is he making the young men relief society? Like, why are they cooking? This idea. I was like, what are you guys talking about? Like, I am following duty to God, but you think I am making the young men, like young women, or relief society? And like, like members are just like laughing, and I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, but during that time, like I actually helped a young man get that young man medallion, because like
Yeah.
we focus on duty to God and learning those things. So it's like a proud moment for me during that time. Like I was able to accomplish those things, but at the same time, it's like, gosh, like they only see my gayness,
Mm-hmm.
that they always like think everything that I do with the young men is like wrong. My young man loves me because I always treat them
Mm.
like, let's go, let's eat. Like
Mm.
they enjoyed me as a leader because like I really care about
Yeah.
judgmental members only see like, my gosh, he's making the young men relief society.
Yeah, and like if you were a more masculine young men's leader, then they probably wouldn't have noticed as much. But
Oh yeah,
because there's this, once again, they've never had like the three gay young men before till you guys. There's just like some like we might call it prejudice because it's like prejudging, and so they
yeah,
have this lens of looking at you. And
yeah,
I would love to say talking on this, but I think we have to go on to BYU Hawaii and BYU. But before we move on to BYU Hawaii, actually, this is a good transition. Is there's a reason why I have Cris with us today. Is when I was at BYU Hawaii and I hear all these stories from LGBTQ people from the 60 plus countries that came to BYH. I haven't gotten all the countries, but there were a lot of Filipinos. There are a lot of Filipinos that are LGBTQ on that campus. And so, one of the reasons why I'm having Cris on this podcast is I think Cris embodies a lot of the common things that so many Filipino men have gone through, at least. And so, I'm really glad that you shared all those details because not only will members who are here in the U.S. understand, but I really hope that this podcast can reach some of those LGBTQ Pinoys out there,
yeah,
for them to feel like, you know what, that's what it was kind of like for me too, you know?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And then yeah, after my mission, like I'm still not fully, I did not fully embrace, being gay. So I was like, okay, I remember I was at the Cebu Philippines temple, and I'm praying. I was like, Heavenly Father, um, I think I'm not ready to marry. But in my thoughts, back in my mind, I was like, I'm gay and I think I can't marry a woman. Like, but
mhm.
I'm just like saying like, I think I am not ready to get married. But I'm pretty sure Heavenly Father understand what I said. So I was like, during that time, I'm attending a like college in my city, a university, and there are so many like LGBTQ people, and I was like, ugh, I don't want this. Like, I don't want to get exposed. So I was like, Heavenly Father, please guide me. And one of the things that I like, my favorite about the church is like, the personal revelation. Like, I have that strong connection to like personal revelation, and I think I told you this before, but like I always dream when where should I go next? Like I always have that like dream. I always dream about things. And I remember after that prayer, I read the scriptures and I receive an answer that I'm gonna go somewhere far. So, and then the talk about BYU Hawaii, I start dreaming about BYU Hawaii. So I was like, in my thinking, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to a church school. So it's gonna be spiritual. It's gonna be I'm not gonna be like exposed to like LGBTQ stuff. So I was like, this is great. Like I'm gonna go to like church school. So you need to focus on spiritual stuff. I was like, yay, cool. So 2016, I went to BYU Hawaii, and I remember my first class at BYU. I saw that in my dream, like that first classroom. Like I already saw
Wow.
that in my dream. So I was like, okay, I am meant to be here. Like I have a lot of those students who like really solidify the idea of like I am meant to be at BYU Hawaii. So during that BYU Hawaii experience, I was like, okay, cool. Like I made it. Like I'm here.
So, Chris, tell us more about the BYU Hawaii experience after you tried the dating thing. Now what?
Yeah. So at BYU Hawaii, like it's so funny because like people like can openly talk about like gay stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? So at BYU, that was the first experience where like I talked to a leader about being gay, and then they kind of like helped me with those, and they're very loving and caring towards me. So I felt really like open. But one of the struggles is like, like also like at BYU, like that was the first time that I experienced like really like dating a guy, and it was like really, I would say like a bad experience for me, because like it's just like not what I expected. I got dumped, and then
Wow.
um being dumb, and like at the same time like struggling with the church, like questioning like why am I here, like why am I gay, and now this is what I'm gonna experience being dumb. So just like mix of things for like I became so depressed. My mental health was like went down, and I was like that was like the saddest moments of my like I remember, I don't know if you know Laie Point.
Of
I
course.
remember walking them at 1 a.m. because I was trying to jump, like literally. And then I think the spirit was so strong. Like my friend texted me, like, "Where are you at?" And I was like, "I'm at Laie Point." And she just no, she said, "Don't do it." And then I came back to my senses. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I need to go. I need to go back." So like those struggling like spirituality and then like my sexuality at BYU Hawaii was like my lowest point. Like I was so depressed. Took some like depression like pills and stuff just to help me like move forward. And then
And
I
that's
remember
and that's
in
where
20
that's where we met, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that I
yeah.
caught
And I
you
think
in that phase.
yeah, and I think when we were like became friends, like I'm in that phase where like I'm just like struggling. And then I remember 2020 when I was like finishing my job at BYU Hawaii, I was like, okay, like time to get out of this place, time to think what's my next move. And I dreamed again. I dream about BYU Provo. I already I got already because I was planning to do masters. I already got accepted at New Zealand. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to New Zealand. I'm gonna like go there, just be just myself, and then start again. And I dream about BYU Provo, and I dream about meeting a white guy. I was like
Wow.
in my dream, like I was in a balcony and I was like, there's a white guy in front of me. I was like, who is this white guy? I was like, am I gonna marry a white guy? So I was like, maybe it is. So I was like, okay, I decided like I'm gonna go to BYU Provo because like I feel like Heavenly Father is telling me to go there. But at the same time, my friends were like, who had a bad experience at BYU, it was like, are you sure you want to go there? Like people are racist, people are homophobic. You don't because I bet he has a bad experience. So I was like, oh my goodness, like is that something that I want to do? So I was like, I don't care. Like this is my dream. I'm gonna follow like the kind of like the inspiration. So I went to BYU. I was in the MPA program, and it was a different experience than my BYU Hawaii. It was like a great experience
Mm.
because that was the first time that I came out in a class, like
Wow.
in a group of people, because of like in my cohort is the best because like such loving LDS, like Christ like towards me people, and like just
Mm.
like support me. And then I remember when I was at the plane traveling to BYU-Provo, I was like, I'm gonna open myself to dating. Like I'm not gonna restrict myself anymore. I was like, even though I'm gonna be going at BYU, but I think it's the right thing for me to do to go on dates at BYU. So I opened the Hinge app.
Mm.
The first person that messaged is Dallin, my husband now, and we went on a date.
What?
So literally my first orientation week at the MPA program. And it's meant to be because he was also in the program. Like he graduated last semester, and then I was like came in and joined the program. So basically he graduated and then I came in the program. So as I feel like it was really meant to be. So I was like, oh my gosh, like this is cool. So we talk about we met for orientation week, we had a dinner, and we are like, okay, cool. Like, we went on a date, and I thought it's gonna be like the first date, but I was like, I like this guy. I'm gonna keep like pushing. And then we went to multiple dates. And then I remember I told you about the dream, like I was in the balcony. I remember we went to his family's cabin. I saw the balcony there.
No way.
Dallin was standing in front of me and it's snowing. I was like, I'm gonna marry this guy. I just know I'm gonna marry this guy. And in that relationship that we had, of course, like we hit it because I was like attending BYU, but I was doing really good at BYU as well. Like I'm in part of like a news center. I'm like really doing well with school, even though it's a very hectic schedule, but like I was able to find time like dating Dallin, going on dates with him at the same time, like doing my school. So I, I was like very content and like happy with that like BYU situations that I have.
Can I ask what was it like attending church then? You're at BYU in Provo and you're dating a man. Like
Yeah,
what was that like navigating being in church on a Sunday where
yeah,
people would say like you're not supposed to do that. And now our podcast is neither for nor against. So I just curious,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
what was that like? That
yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, I think at first Dallin and I were like, I think I'm more worried because I'm attending BYU, but at first I was like, oh, am I supposed to be doing this? But at the same time, that's the only time that I feel like I was really happy. And at the same time, I'm actively like attending church, like with my friends. And during that time, I feel like, um, like I'm not doing things where like it's gonna limit me to do things at the church. Like what I mean, like it's like law of chastity. Like Don and
Right,
I
right,
are like
right.
we're not like doing things that would like limit me to do church stuff. So we're like I'm in a relationship with someone,
Yeah.
And then I keep like attending church until like like we were like I'm basically just, like waiting for my graduation to like for us to get married because like we both love the church, we both love BYU.
Mhm.
Like his family's like a BYU like just like legacy. All of his siblings attended BYU, so it's like I also have that feeling where like what like BYU was a blessing to me. I don't wanna like we were like let's get married after BYU,
Mm.
because we don't wanna ruin that experience for us because I'm gonna get kicked out at BYU,
Mhm. Mhm.
and in that thinking we're like let out of respect to BYU and like the church, let's just like get married after BYU, like let's let you enjoy BYU and then after that let's get married, so like that kind of like feeling we're like although I have Dallin on secret, but like I also have my dedication to the church and BYU at the same time.
Yeah.
So that feeling was like I feel like I'm doing my best during that time while I was like attending church at BYU.
Yeah. And then I believe you get married like Shortly
1 week after graduation.
1 week after graduation. You heard it here, everybody. 1 week
Yeah, one
after
week
graduation.
after graduation. And you know what's the best feeling? Most of my cohort attended the wedding. My
Wow.
professors attended the wedding. Like my coworkers at BYU attended the wedding. And it's not even like they think that it's wrong, but it's like just like we love Chris of who he is. He has this celebration and we want him to be happy, so we're gonna be there. And like these like professors are like leaders of the church. And but they set that example like, I respect you and you respect me. Like I'm gonna show that respect. Like I respect you as a person. I respect you as a student. I respect you as a friend. So our wedding was such a great experience, especially Dallin's family.
Mhm.
Dallin's family, like his dad married us, and
Wow.
it's such a cool feeling where like he has this very loving family that just very Christ-like towards us. And literally like I felt so blessed to be part of this family because I was like, yeah, your family is amazing. I'm pretty sure like they have those worries as well, like like what would happen to Dallin. And a lot of people, especially back home, a lot of people think because I posted on my Facebook that I'm
Mm.
getting married, and then that get a lot of like attention, and I became a hot topic back home.
Wow.
And a lot of people think that I left the church because I
Wow.
married Alan, but they don't know that me and Alan loves the church so much that we want to stay and do the things that, we still want to enjoy the sacrament meeting. We still want to enjoy serving members of the church or non-members of the church. We just want to like be there because like it's such like a big part of our lives. So
It's still
so
that
far,
safe
like,
space. It's still that safe space
yeah,
for you.
that safe space for me. Like I have that like feeling where like Dallin and I is just like that's just a big part of our lives that we can't just say like no, like we're done with the church because we're married. So it's not like that because Dallin is like a really like big like Mormon family, and it's like the typical like very like tight Mormon family, and my background was very different. But I remember when we were like after getting married, we were like, okay, are we gonna attend church? We were at Provo that time, and I remember emailing our like bishop in that area. It's like, hey bishop, we're gay couples. We would love to attend church, but we would like to meet with you first.
Wow.
And the bishop was like, yeah, let's meet. And I can tell like the bishop was really scared to meet with us. Like you can tell like he's nervous because he might maybe he don't know how to deal with it. But that was such a spiritual encounter for both of us because we were like, I think the initial thought of the bishop was like, oh my gosh, are they gonna demand things? Or like, are they gonna ask me to do something? But like Dalian and I came to his office like, hey bishop, we're a gay couple, we just want to attend church. We're not here to make any problems. I think we just
Mm.
want to take or get anything that still we can get from the church. And I remember the bishop was like, he felt light. I
Mm.
can tell that he felt light, and he was like, you know what, Chris? I remember he said this. I think as a church, we need to welcome every level of participation in the church. It's either you're inactive, active, less active, in probation, or excommunicated. We should welcome those people because
Mm.
this is the Church of Christ. Everyone is welcome here. And I was like, that really sick in my mind. I was like, yeah, members can't tell, like, I can't go to church. Like, no one said I can't go to church. So I was like, and we were like, we always offer, like, Bishop, like, we're not here to challenge church policies, but we just want to let you know that we're happy to serve. So I remember during that time, the few weeks, Bishop was like, okay, Chris, we have an assignment for you. Like, can you guys like make the sacrament program every Sunday and like print it and like give it
Yeah.
to the members? Like, sure, we're happy to do that. Like, I'm happy to do that. So those kind of like experience were like, and then when I moved to Salt Lake, we do the same thing. Also, like during that time, the stake president met with us too,
Wow.
because I think the bishop was like, "Hey, can you talk to this couple?" And then have that same feeling where like, I think the president was like, "Okay, what do you guys want?" I was like, President, we don't want anything. We just want to attend church and be here. Like, we don't need any special treatment. Because, like, they were like, should we tell the members, like, you don't need to, because, like, we don't need special treatment. We just want to be there. We just want to be there. Then the president, I remember the stake president was like, okay, I think we don't need to put you guys in a council. Maybe like there's a process in there.
Wow.
Or he was like, I don't think we need that. And then he told Bishop, like, okay, like, give them assignment, like, help, like,
Wow.
give them help. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I wish that this is like the experience of like the LGBTQ couples, in the church. Other when we moved to Salt Lake, um, we message our bishop like the same thing, like, hey bishop, we're a gay couple, that, and then first week, our Relief Society and what do you call this, Elders Quorum president invited us for dinner. I'm like, hey Chris, welcome to the ward. Chris and Dallin, like, here are the things that are happening in the ward, and then we met with the bishop. I was like, hey bishop, same thing, same dialogue. Like, bishop, we're not here to ruin everything. We're here to like attend church, feel the spirit, learn from the gospel, and then do the things that we can still do, just like serving people. So in November, we have like a big project for our members. So it's just like, that kind of like feeling where like, well, this should be the feeling of like LGBTQ couples in the church. Like members should just focus on their own, church attendance. Like, you don't need to like see or like, oh, there's two gay couple in there. Like, that's so unnecessary. Like, just focus on, the church, and like that really made so far our church experience great.
It's so crazy to think like when you flash back to where you were as a child being watched by all the members in your branch,
Yeah,
and you're not even dating anybody, you're just being you, and
yeah,
and now here you are in 2024 with your husband in Utah, and you're greeted with love by your church leaders, local church leaders, and you're included as part of it. And like, what a
yeah,
journey you have had from that childhood that had some family trauma with some hard things with the branch, and then this going on mission, coming back, still have some problems with the branch, heartbroken in BYU Hawaii, and these dreams just kept on leading you now to
yeah,
BYU, then to Dallin, and now
yeah,
these branches. Like, could like you've gone on this amazing journey that we can't probably promise it to anybody, but for
mm-hmm.
me as your friend, having like, I remember our conversations at BYU Hawaii, and knowing where you were emotionally at that time, and to see you find joy through watching your social media posts, I'm like, we got to tell Chris's story. So let's close with this, Chris. Like,
Yeah.
what advice do you have for people like you that have had your background? What would your final thoughts be for those people that are on similar journeys?
Yeah, like, I think one thing that I would say, that like focus on your own journey. Like, I always knew that Heavenly Father has a plan for me, and for sure He does for you. Like, I feel like I want you to understand that, like, even though like it's hard for you right now, but you just need to like search on those people that will support you, because I think that's the only thing that is matter. Like, I have a lot of people in my life who were like, discriminated me, especially in the church. But at BYU, I found my people, of all
Mhm.
places, right? It's BYU that I found my people. I found Dallin. So I think, like, it's gonna be hard. Like, the journey might be very hard for you right now, but like, just keep going, because at the end of the day, you'll find those people, and then it makes life easier for you, because you have those support system that you haven't found before. And that just really, like, my own experience just like made me realize, oh wow, like, there are people out there that would love and take care of me, just like Dallin, my BYU MPA cohort, my church leaders. Like, you'll find those people. Not everyone in the world will be like negative towards you, but there are people that will be always positive towards you. Just find them. I know it might be hard to find them, but like, you'll find them, and it makes life better for you.
Fantastic, Cris. Thank
Yeah.
you. It's been a joy having you. So thank you for being a pioneer, one from the Philippines, and living your wonderful life there in Utah, because you're laying footholds for other people like you to walk in. So thank you, Cris, for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is fun.
Salamat.
Salamat.